You're listening to the podcast Coffee with Mike and Julie, Libertarians Talk Psychology. This is current commentary from an MBA businessman and a PhD psychologist.
Look what they done to my song, Ma.
So today I want to dig in a little more to the complexity of free speech and some of the important caveats to free speech, and then really dig into a situation I have with the local snowflake community, also called the psychologists.
And I know you wanted to kind of talk about the clip a little bit, but I wanted to just emphasize the importance that we place on free speech, that it is the number one step and avenue for having any kind of social change. Is you got to be able to talk about this stuff.
Free speech is the structure, the process of free speech is the structural design of feedback in a system that can be self-correcting. You can't do without it and expect the errors of the system to correct. So when the designers put free speech in, and they put it in, they kind of put it in some of the founding documents, but they came back and said, oh my God, we got to put this in amendment, the Bill of Rights, and it's the first right. They were kind of seeing ahead. I don't know if they're seeing ahead or if it's been proven over and over.
Brilliant to make it the first one.
The first one. I mean, the First Amendment is so profound psychologically when you think about the psychology of being human, and then you go and directly apply that, a look at that from that Amendment number 1, from that frame. It just blows me away every time I read it and think about what it means and read someone's writing on it. It blows me away how they were so ahead of everything.
Oh, it's brilliant. And in today's world, people are trying to change free speech to speech where everyone is still happy and no one is offended or angry about what's been said.
Exactly. That's a very good point, that people, the snowflakes, I'm going to call them snowflakes because that's what they are, and they're taking their value system of be nice to everybody and they're forcing it onto the culture. Okay, so what you just said, and it's so important to realize that when you do that, you suppress dissent and you suppress the exact characteristics that you need to create a culture that thinks for itself and solves its own problems. It's a profound problem, what's going on with free speech.
Now, Monty Python has a different idea of what free speech is.
Well, that's a great intro to this clip. So just to bring people into the process, we were looking for a clip about ridicule, and we couldn't find one. We were kind of like on a time, we were running out of time, got to publish, and ran across this clip, and you said this is a great clip for when you can take free speech too far. So this is a clip about the opposite conclusion, that free speech can be taken too far. So and of course Monty Python, we grew up with Monty Python. We grew our kids up with Monty Python. I mean, people probably would censor Monty Python these days, I'm sure. I'm sure it would be censored. You don't show your kids Monty Python because it's so irreverent, but it's some of the best humor I think ever done. So let's just show the clip.
Oh God, I'm bored. I'm fed up with that game. Let's play another game. I know what. What?
Hello? This is your captain speaking. There is absolutely no cause for alarm. No, not yet.
Let it sink in. They're thinking, what is there absolutely no cause for alarm about? Are the wings on fire?
The wings are not on fire.
Now they're thinking, why should he say that? So we say...
Oh, how are we doing? They've stopped eating, looking a bit worried.
Good.
Hang on, one of them's going to the washroom.
Is he there yet?
Please return to your seats and fasten your safety belts immediately, please. Yes. Here he comes, going up the aisle like the clappers.
Hello? You will find your life jackets under your seats. I'm sorry, you will find them on the racks above your heads. But do not unfasten your safety belts.
Great, that was marvellous. See them. Right, gobbledygook. Oh. Yeah.
The scransons above your head are now ready to flange. Please unfasten your safety belts and press the emergency photo scamps on the back of the seats behind you.
Marvellous, milling about, climbing over the seat.
But do not leave your seats.
Do not panic.
Tea will now be served.
Inflate your life jackets.
And extinguish all cigarettes.
Please remove the luggage from the racks above your heads and place it on the racks on the other side of the aircraft.
Except the hand luggage.
Which you should sit on.
Now the look.
Hang on. What? Hang on.
What?
They've all jumped out!
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't some trouble about this.
Okay, so that is a characterization of two airplane pilots taking free speech too far because they're bored.
Which I wonder a lot of times about free speech in general. If people are just bored and they
Jack with other
your
people.
Your dad was an example of
somebody. He got bored so easy. He would
get
jack
bored,
everybody up.
And he would jack people up.
He would just irritate them.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad example of being bored and using speech to fire people up.
To just like, let me just jack with everybody around me. And of course, that's hostile. That's hostility. So the snowflakes have it right that there are limits to free speech. So I'm not going to say that, we've got a lot to say about that.
There are socially appropriate limits to free speech.
Yeah. But you're going to bring this up because this was the first thing. When I told you what I was talking about today, this was the first thing you said. And this example, this true life example I have with the psychologist, the first thing you said was, yeah, and that's subjective. Who's judging whether that is a violation? And that is like, the cancel culture, which is I'm judging that you're not okay to say what you just said, it's really bizarre psychologically, because the people judging don't seem to understand their frame. Now, Monty Python, that clip we played, well, the reason that's funny is because that's over the top for everybody. So that's funny. But why is it funny? Because we all understand the hostility involved in that behavior. Okay, so let me bring up. Did you want to add something to that?
No, that's good.
Okay, I guess because we've talked about humor and self-deception before. We have a podcast on that.
I guess I would add that there are two key things to me. One is when you set up rules that are vague, then you have to have some authority figure who determines things. So that's number one. Number two is when you set up a rule that says we want to have peaceful discourse, that's very close to setting up a situation where peaceful discourse is only possible if you're saying things that I agree with.
Yes.
And both of those things are very harmful to free speech.
Yes. Yeah, that's a very good point, because if somebody is judging what's acceptable free speech, then that motivation can be corrupted in a nanosecond. If you're saying two things. One is the self-interest of the judge is got to come into play. It's not maybe come into play. It's going to come into play. Everyone has biases, and the judge will have their bias. And then secondly, so the self-interest of the judge is definitely there. and to be a concern. And then the second thing is, at what limit do you cut off free speech for everybody? Okay, so I think these issues are front and center in this situation I'm having with the snowflake psychologists, which I can't say snowflake psychologists on the LPA, the state association listserv, because that would be derogatory, and I can't call anybody a name. I can't call them a snowflake. It
doesn't matter. They came out with a written.
They came out with the written.
It has some hilarious stuff.
It is hilarious. It is hilarious to me. Now, snowflakes are, let me just put that in a better framework and not so hostile. I don't know, is a snowflake a hostile term?
If you're calling someone a name, it's...
What is it, the deplorables and the snowflakes? I mean, so we're deplorables. Okay, I think my colleague did a presentation on the different groups, and he calls snowflakes and deplorables. So as long as you call the other side just as derogatory a term, is that allowed?
I don't know if it's
allowed. Of course it's not allowed.
If you're asking me if it's allowed, yeah. Because they're both funny. Both of those terms are funny, so I like it.
Yeah, well, okay, so what's the underlying psychology? It's tender-minded and tough-minded.
Yeah, those aren't as funny.
Those aren't funny, are they? They aren't as good. They aren't as catchy. They aren't clickbait.
But see, neither one of them is calling someone a name either.
Yeah.
That's a frame of mind. When you call someone a deplorable or a snowflake, you're calling a person a name. That's funnier.
It's also a way to get attention. If I call people tender-minded and tough-minded, that's boring.
Yes, it is.
So in order to get a message across, you need to first get their attention. So, I think snowflake is the right way. I'll accept my label of deplorable. I'll accept that. I think I might be deplorable. What does deplorable really mean?
Well, you'd have to ask Hillary Clinton what the definition of deplorable is.
Obama was, we cling to our religion and guns. I don't own a gun, and I'm kind of religious.
Yeah, that doesn't. But we like those people.
I do like those people. I do like those people that cling to. If we were invaded, I definitely want all the men in my community to have a gun. Lots of ammunition.
Yeah, I want to be on a street that has a lot of religious gun-toting people.
Really? It's like, where do you want to be? I was like, I want to be on a street with a lot of guys who really consider themselves masculine, who know how to use a gun, have lots of ammunition, and Christian fanatics. Not fanatics, but Christian.
I guess.
The Catholics aren't considered Christians by the...
Sure.
No, they aren't. I think the Baptists and the Methodists don't consider the Catholics Christian.
I've heard that.
I've heard that.
That's a bullshit.
You think that's bullshit?
Yeah, I believe Christ was God. I mean, that's Christian.
Well, it does make sense. They're not Jewish and they're not Muslims.
Right.
So
no, that's just infighting.
That's just infighting.
That's infighting within Christianity. That's all.
Okay. I worried about that, although since I'm not a practicing Catholic, I don't know where it makes any difference. I don't know why you're worried. It's kind of like gave up the Catholic Church when they told me I had to go through pre-Cana before I had a baby. Okay, that's a different topic. But let me talk about what happened to me. This is part of my ongoing battle as the rogue psychologist in the State Association of Psychology in Louisiana. Now, I want to point out that I'm a 40-year retired emeritus psychologist. I mean, I know what I'm doing in psychology, as much as any other psychologist knows what they're doing. And I was the president of the damn place for two terms.
Recently.
Sort of recently. So I post a joke about the corrupt psychology board, and I get censored and told that I falsified documents. Okay, I can tell from my own tone of voice that this still pisses me off. And so, okay, that's a different topic, and I think I've probably beat that topic to death. And we'll see how that turns out, since I am currently threatening to file a lawsuit against my own association, which they deserve. But they put out these rules for the listserv afterward.
And it's titled...
No, that's not the title. This is just page 9 and 10. This is Rule 9. But this is the communication rules for people talking on the listserv, which they happen, back to my being pissed off, they happen to violate my rights when they disciplined me. They didn't follow the rules. Now, I find this true with snowflakes. They want you to follow their rules, but they don't follow their own rules. So I thought this was important for us to discuss, is Rule 9, because this is hilarious to me. They have a bunch of edicts like unprofessional behavior. Now, they're defining professional behavior. I don't know what they mean by that. Professional behavior.
That's the problem. They didn't define it, did they?
I mean, anybody that tries to define professional behavior, I found this to be strange. They go, that was unprofessional. And in fact, if you look up professional, it's having to do with a profession. I mean, it's a circular reasoning term, and they use it, they throw it out. The snowflakes will throw out professional. What they mean is, you're misbehaving in my view. We're part of the same group, and you just misbehave, I think. Okay, but so this rule number 9 says you'll not be unprofessional. Okay, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but they don't want you to be hostile or sarcastic, negative remarks, etc., etc. But then they list these new things that I've never heard of before as a psychologist. And they consider this bullying, harassment, or trolling. Instigating quarrels, provoking emotional outbursts, disrupting normal discourse by posting digressive statements, inflammatory content, etc., etc. You have something to say about that?
Well, I'm waiting for you to get to the different hilarious topics.
Yeah,
but the thing I want to say before you get to them is that they say these behaviors include, but are not limited to, the following, and then they list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They list 7 things. That are hilarious. But these are bad things, but that not limited. We may find other bad things.
So that's back to your point. We judge. And we don't define the rules here, because we may think of another rule.
Exactly.
Another rule might occur to us, and you may be so bad that we have to create a rule just for you.
And we'll come up with a name for it.
Yeah. And by the way, some of this has been used against me. Okay, so the first one is dogpiling, brigading. I've never heard of this. Rallying in a coordinated, sustained, and organized way for the purpose of overwhelming an individual or group. I mean, where the hell do they get that? Who's ever seen anything like that on the list?
Dogpiling is like a pack of dogs, I guess.
Oh, it's like being in a pack.
A pack of dogs that attack some animal.
Yeah. Okay, by the way, I've been attacked like that. Okay, the second one is doxing. Now, I actually agree with this. Publishing private information about an individual or group. Now, they have another rule.
Without consent. Yeah,
without consent.
That's really bad.
Yeah, that is covered in another rule. They don't have to even... But I didn't know doxing meant that. Flaming. Now, this one I object to. Flaming. Derogatory comments, ridicule, excessive sarcasm, and belittling an individual or group. Well, flaming, derogatory is anything... Oh, let's go back to their saying they have under unprofessional behavior is anything unsupportive or disrespectful. And I want to point out that respect is earned. I mean, I don't respect people just because they're talking.
Well, I mean, I don't know where we're going to end up with this, but
gaslighting.
Under flaming, you know, as long as you're not calling someone a name.
Like snowflakes.
Yeah. Well,
if I say, you snowflake,
You know, if you're trying
Jane,
to be, you ignorant slut.
You ignorant slut. That's Saturday Night Live clip.
Dan, times change, and so does the nature of relationships. People are reluctant to get married these days, and looking at divorce statistics, who can blame them? But the lack of a piece of paper does not necessarily mean the lack of a total commitment. A woman in this modern-day relationship may well give up all her own personal pursuits, as Michelle Marvin claims she did, to give her full support to her man's career. And Michelle Marvin is just asking that the courts recognize that reality. Dan, there's an old saying, behind every successful man, there's a woman, a loving, giving, caring woman. But you wouldn't know about that, Dan, because there's no old saying about what's behind a miserable failure.
Jane, you ignorant slut.
Jane, you ignorant slut.
But, you know, comments, ridicule, sarcasm, those all seem like they ought to be acceptable as long as you aren't calling someone a name.
Well, I see your point.
I can understand a group of people get together and saying, in order for us to be nice to each other, let's not call each other names. I can understand that.
Yeah. Well, some of this I do understand. I'm going to save gaslighting for the end because that's where I want to focus my attention. Then hate speech. And this one's interesting, the way they write this. Speech that expresses hate or discourage or encourages violence toward a person or group based on something such as race, religion, sex, or sexual orientation. The bizarre thing about how they stated that is it sounds like you can encourage violence otherwise. So, you know, you can encourage violence in any way. I mean, of course, you're not supposed to encourage violence. I mean, that seems like this is where it gets...
Even the loosest definitions of free speech do not allow
violence.
Violence.
Yeah, it's like encouraging violence. Let's go out and shoot somebody. That's not free speech. Okay, so sea lioning. Never heard of this. Where do they get these terms?
Sea lioning. Okay.
Sea lion. I guess the sea lions do this. I mean, I guess they're talking about sea lions. I mean, where do they come up with this?
I don't know. I need to see where that might come
Repetitive questions or invitations to debate when, in fact, the person wants to end the conversation. I just call that...
insistence under the guise of sincerity.
Yeah, how do they determine all this? They're good mind readers, obviously. They know what's in a person's mind, which I find the snowflakes do.
In order to erode the patience or goodwill of an individual.
Yeah, and so who decides when the debate is over? Okay, spamming, unsolicited. This one doesn't affect us. Spamming unsolicited messages for commercial advertising. Let's go back to gaslighting. This is the bizarre, upside-down psychology that people can expect from my profession these days, gaslighting. And this is good because I hear this term, and I'm like, I saw the movie. I mean, I see movies where people manipulate the thinking of another person. I mean, the gaslighting is a bizarre interpretation. But here's what the LPA, and I don't know where they got all this. They might have got this from the American Psychological Association. Covertly sowing doubt in an individual or group, making them question their own memory, perception, or judgment, and minimizing or invalidating their emotional reaction. That is a bizarre definition for psychologists to embrace. Because let me tell you what psychotherapy is. It is exactly that. Psychotherapy is exactly sowing doubt in an individual, making them question their own memory, perception, or judgment, and minimizing or invalidating their emotional reality. That is psychotherapy.
Wow. Golly, that's really...
That is the definition of psychotherapy.
That's
because
really
psychotherapy, we assume that there's a problem in the person's memory, perception, judgment, or emotional reaction.
So if you get kicked out of the profession, instead of calling yourself a psychologist, you just call yourself a gaslighter.
Did you know the word therapist? You know, so I told you the other day I'm looking for a therapist. I do need a therapist. Got issues going on. And I was thinking, well, where am I going to find a therapist that I can trust? I don't think I'm going to find one with the 94% progressive psychologists. In fact, we should be able to choose a therapist on their political beliefs. I want a libertarian therapist, and I don't know where to go get one, you know. But, okay, so here's the thing about therapist. Do you know that if you break the word down, it comes out the rapist?
You must have pointed that out to me before.
I'm sure I've said that over the years. I forget who first person, the rapist. And so I'm reading this book by Merleau, I think. Merleau is it? But anyway, it's called Rape of the Mind. And it is a profound book. This guy was in Holland. I think he's Dutch, psychiatrist. And everyone should read that book. And read Gulag Archipelago and read, what's the other one? But anyway, about how groups rape the mind of another group. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, they're right about sowing doubt. But what is the definition of debate? Is to sow doubt in the opposition's frame of the problem.
That's what debate's all about.
That's exactly what is supposed to happen. So not only...
as long as you're not using force.
Yeah, as long as you're using words. As long as you're using words. So the snowflakes, the psychologists, and so psychology is no longer existent in its original form. And, you know, I'm a rogue psychologist, but was existing 20 years ago, in my view, not even in Louisiana, which is a red state. We've been taken over by snowflakes and their philosophy. The philosophy is very against mental health, very much. And I can't say that our science is worth a flip in either. They're interacting with our science and causing terrible misunderstandings of science. Uh-huh. So I wouldn't give us a nickel. Now the individuals, there are some individuals that haven't lost their minds, but as a group, I wouldn't give you a nickel for us.
So do you want to conclude?
Well, do you have something you want to add?
Well, I just, think we sprinkled in the topic, the really important stuff. I mean, free speech is super important.
Free speech and the acceptance of debate and the creation of doubt in your framing the problem, creation of doubt in your belief system. Your belief system becomes distorted by self-interest. So creating doubt in that is exactly important. And to be a doubting person, to not follow the herd mentality, to get away from the herd and think it through and process it. So we're in a time, I don't know exactly how to conclude, but the only hope we have is that free speech will be maintained, and that cancel culture and political correctness will somehow go by the wayside so that people can debate in the best possible way they can find to debate the truth of the matter. Now, some people are going to mess up and maybe not do so well, and they're going to be derogatory and they're going to be critical. Well, that should be tolerant.
They'll call people names.
And
people will think, well, you're encouraging violence. I mean,
we're not going to hit the target. We're humans. We're going to mess up. Some of us are going to mess up and we're not going to hit the target. But the solution is not to get away from free speech. Free speech is a profound issue for everybody.